You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony.
We're back. It's Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We're broadcasting live from the Concierge Landscape Studios, and we're brought to you by Extreme Exteriors. Right now, it's time for a message from the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. This MHA Minute is brought to you by Pest Control Services. When you need an exterminator, you need someone reliable and effective. Give Greg Keener a call at Pest Control Services, 952-894-9748. Pest Control Services is a proud member of Angie's List and a member of the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. That's Pest Control Services, 952-894-9748, 952-894-9748. Tell Greg you heard it here. This week at the Multi-Housing Association on Tuesday, May 24th, is the Product and Service Showcase for certified resident maintenance technicians. At this showcase, you'll meet multiple vendors and pick up great ideas and leads, hear about cutting-edge products and services. Attend this free event. It includes lunch, May 24th. Great for maintenance techs. For more information, call MHA at 952-854-8500. We're talking to Mike Cass from MetLife Home Loans about new legislation that came into effect last year, the Dodd-Frank Act. And that's one of the segments of that act requires mortgage lenders to retain 5% ownership in any mortgages they issue. Mike, you were saying it may be too early to talk about the unintended consequences of this, but where do you see some snarls for lenders in complying with this 5% retention?
Well, the legislation, when it was laid out, they allowed for a 270-day prescribed wait period. So the legislation's still got a lot of interpretation to go.
I see.
So that's the kind of stuff that everyone's in the state capitol working on right now. And in the meantime, I mean, we just focus on the intent of the legislation is to have the skin in the game. Mm-hmm. I think almost everyone would agree that would lend to better lending decisions, and it will create some changes. I think maybe having capital would be a big part of this. You have the liquidity to keep 5% skin in the game. And there are some people that may have a challenge that way. That certainly won't be a challenge for the major lenders.
So maybe fewer people in mortgages overall, because only the larger entities are going to be able to continue on with something like this.
Yeah, but there are a lot of ways for maybe the smaller lenders to meet that provision, mm-hmm. and they're actively lobbying to ensure, because you want to have a broad landscape of options.
Sure.
I don't think this 5% rule is going to be really as impactful as it may sound.
Okay.
There's still some time ahead of us for that to get worked.
All right. One of the things that hit me, Mike, and this is just someone speaking from the community associations industry, okay? Yeah. When we deal with HOAs all the time, one of the other provisions of this Dodd-Frank bill also was a requirement, and not necessarily, I suppose, bad, but it says that a number of the federal agencies will need to learn to work together. So you've got groups like the Securities and Exchange Commission, Federal Reserve, the Department of HUD, Federal Housing Finance Agency, that are all going to be asked to work in concert, which means they're going to probably be coming up with new criteria for loans being approved, and that is kind of scary from a guy sitting where I do, because sometimes I get the feeling that someone in Washington doesn't necessarily know what might actually be workable in Minnesota. Let me give you an example.
Or in a homeowners association.
Let me give you an example. FHA financing is changed over the last couple years as it pertains to townhomes and condominiums. One thing that comes to my mind, Mike, is there is a requirement of FHA now stating that a minimum of 10% of a homeowners association's total operating budget needs to be set aside each and every year for the reserves in order for an FHA loan to be approved. Now, FHA is probably the major vehicle for most home loans right now, isn't it?
It's not the major, but it's probably the largest. it's not the majority of the financing in this country, but it's the largest.
Okay.
When you say largest, what percent?
It varies quite a bit, but somewhere in the 30-40% range.
Okay.
Possibly.
All
Okay,
right.
but certainly if FHA financing isn't there, that takes away a big chunk of the market.
Sure,
then,
and
I suppose.
it's a key option for a lot of home buyers.
Yeah. And the issue that I have is, I know some homeowner associations that we manage as a company, and they've been quite responsible. They've had professional capital replacement studies done every few years on their property. They have set aside and fully funded those amounts so that they have the money that's needed. And because they're fully funded, they don't need to put in 10%
Of their
operating fund for their reserves. But now if they don't do it, they're not in compliance according to FHA. And someone, even though they're doing everything they should do, here's an unintended consequence where nobody would conceivably get an FHA loan. What can be done about something like that?
Well, I think this is a good example of kind of legislating to the least common denominator. And because not every HOA is new concepts, and not everyone's has got the history and the experience of you to make sure that you are properly funding those associations, and so they end up passing legislation to kind of catch the rest. I think you probably, in the years that you've been doing this, and in the number of associations you've taken over, you've probably run across, at least occasionally, some underfunded.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. What bothers me, though, is the legislators, nobody was there advising them, I guess, that perhaps you should make an exception for those homeowner associations that are fully funded and can show that they're fully funded, right?
Correct. And the legislation does have some provisions for these reserve studies. And so there are lenders, that will take the time to work with the HOA and to work with HUD to demonstrate that, hey, we actually are adequately funded, even though it's not it doesn't fit your box. We're outside the box, but we are adequately funded. And that does take some additional work by the lender and by the HOA. And you want to find a lender and an HOA that'll support you on those efforts. Because these are all guidelines. They're not hard and fast.
Okay, so you think it's possible to get around this particular thing if you can put in the work and you have a lender that's supportive?
Yeah, Gene, I think, mentioned reserve studies, and that's really what they're looking for.
Okay,
it's trying to stop the bad practices. It's not trying to stop the good practices.
All right,
good.
So
good.
you're saying that there is hope, and with a experienced I guess a loan officer, exceptions can be made through that underwriting process, and loans can still be approved.
Yeah, clearly a lender that has the resources to interface.
Okay.
That way, and also it's important that you have an experienced HOA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we could all tell some stories for a long time about HOAs that were underfunded and told everybody that they were fine, and something happened, and their funds weren't there.
Well, I tell you what, in wrapping up with our time with you, Mike, why don't you tell our listeners how can they get a hold of you if they have if they have questions, if they would like to see what you might be able to do in helping them with a home loan?
Well, there's a couple of ways. The easiest one is just my number, and you'll hear some occasional radio spots on your show. 612-201-5898, or you can email me. It's mcass, MCASS, @metlife.com. And then there's always the website, which is just mike-cass.com, MIKE-CASS.com.
Okay.
Well, Mike, we appreciate you taking some time to be with us this morning. We appreciate you helping to sponsor the show and being able to be on from time to time to give us some valuable insight, too, in mortgage lending. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you both very much.
Nice to meet you, Mike.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.
It's interesting. I think the lesson here is that if you are looking at purchasing a townhome or a condominium and you're looking at the financial information from that homeowners association, you need to dig a little deeper. If FHA underwriting criteria says, you know what, they didn't save 10%, so we can't underwrite your loan, maybe you need to dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, only the purchaser can really start this action, the homeowners association doesn't know you're looking to purchase within the homeowners association. So it's up to the consumer to be aware.
Oh, that's true. And
Isn't it?
and that one issue, that's just one. I mean, there are several things when I think of FHA financing and some of the new criteria that I think is hurtful to home loans. And if you don't have an experienced lender, you're not going to be able to get around it. For example, another one states that no more than 10% of any association can be owned by one person or one entity.
Yeah, and that's becoming a bigger issue nowadays.
Yeah, we have an association that we have taken on over the last year where a third of it has not been sold. The developer still owns it. They're being responsible by renting it out, and but they would not be able to get FHA financing because here you have one entity owning more than 10%. Well, things that you need to know. Well, there's a lot more to go. Don't go away. We've got a whole nother hour of Where You Live with Gene and Tony. But we're going to take a break now for news and commercials. We'll be back on the other side of this hour. See you in a few.